Hello y'all, and welcome back to my channel, and welcome to another installment of ranking makeup of 2019. If y'all have not seen my best palettes of 2019, I will leave that link down below. Now today is going to be a little bit different because typically in the past I have done best palettes of 2019 or of the year, worst palettes, middle ground makeup, best makeup, worst makeup, but there wasn't, as I was going back through my reviews and makeup I've purchased and releases, there wasn't enough like worst palettes for me to really make a whole video on. So in this video, this is kind of more of like a middle ground, most disappointing makeup rather than just, well, these palettes suck. So in this video, we have got a mixture of things that I just absolutely hated and things that were just kind of subpar, mediocre, in the middle for one reason or another. Now, obviously with these kind of videos, it is very subjective, very much my opinion, my experience. I know for a fact some of these things I'm going to talk about, a lot of y'all and other people really, really love. But just from my expectations and how I experienced with them and stuff like that, they just weren't all that. So obviously take everything I say with a grain of salt. If there are things that I have reviewed, I will leave reviews linked down below so you can get a better in-depth look at these palettes if you want to purchase them or anything like that. It is mostly palettes. There are going to be 3 complexion products because I feel like there weren't, well, I'll start with the palettes and see about doing the other products because I might do just a video on makeup. But without further ado, let's just get into this. And we are actually going to start off with things that I don't own in my possession anymore. And we're going to start off with a kind of obvious one, the Morphe X James Charles palette. Now, I know this has a cult following for a myriad of reasons, and like in the review, maybe I just suck at makeup. That is what, you know, for people who didn't like the palette, that's kind of how James, you know, if you didn't like the palette, you didn't know how to do makeup. You weren't on his level. So maybe I just suck at makeup. That could be it. But y'all, this palette, I feel like I am a relatively large connoisseur of bright colors. I've used pigments, I've used eyeshadows, you know, we're talking Urban Decay Electric palette, Colored Rain, Vivid Pigments, Anastasia. I mean, I have used my share of colorful whateverness. And this palette, for all its hype and for its like near 5-star status on Ulta, it just wasn't all that. The colors needed a lot of finessing. You needed to plead a little bit. You needed to please work for me today. Compared to just other bright, vivid shadows I've used, these were just not a pleasure to work with. The shimmers were okay, but when you've got like affordable shimmers from Juvia's Place and ColourPop and even affordable bright colors from Juvia's Place and ColourPop, this palette just kind of paled in comparison, not just to high-end counterparts, but to more affordable counterparts. I don't know what I did wrong. I don't know if mine was a whatever, but I feel like just compared to all the other palettes, especially bright palettes that were released in 2019, this one just fell really, really short for me. Then another palette that fell really short for me, Kat Von D. She is definitely on her way out of my collection. I feel out of the beauty community. In my personal opinion, I don't think her brand is going to last through 2020, but specifically the Vegan Love palette. Now, I talked about it in my review. I feel like this palette was less about creating a good, fantastic new formula to wow the community with and more, oh, look how vegan I am, which is being used as a justification for her bad behavior, kind of like, you know, putting that whole vegan stamp on it to be like, yeah, I did all this, but I'm a vegan, so it's all good. And there are plenty other vegan eyeshadows and formulas out there, and these were just super disappointing, especially, you know, when you're comparing this sort of stuff to formulas you've tried from the same brand before, like her Metal Crush shadows. Now, I know this palette did not come out saying, oh, this is gonna be Metal Crush, whatever. I got into a lot of trouble for saying that in my review. But it's kind of what it was mimicking. And, you know, she pulled the Metal Crush shadows because she was gonna make them vegan, and then releasing this palette with a lot of similar colors to those singles, I feel like putting 2 and 2 together wasn't too far out there. But these were just not fun to work with. They were a very stiff formula that didn't have a lot of, they did not play well with each other. They did not play well with other shadows. I like a shimmer shadow that can be layered on top of another one. These did not do that. No, 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 no. And so on a whole, this palette was just, I was hoping, I was like, this is gonna be great. This is gonna be fantastic. It's got beautiful colors in there. I'm all about that shimmer life. And it just was not. Kind of reaffirmed the dwindling of her brand in my mind. It just was not the Kat Von D experience that I was hoping for. Okay, now let's talk about some palettes that are more middle ground than anything else. Like, they're not absolutely horrible, and they're not, you know, oh, this is amazing. They're just kind of like, eh. And we're gonna start with a really controversial one, but that is gonna be the Jeffree Star and Shane Dawson Conspiracy Palette. Now, this collection is a collection that broke the internet. This is, you know, it's not gonna be restocked until March of 2020 and la 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 la. Looking at this, it's a nice kind of grungy, different sort of color theory that we've seen, although a lot of people feel like this is very similar to the, I believe, Cardi Picante palette. So there was a little bit of about that. But the main reason I feel that this is middle ground for me, especially compared to the other releases Jeffree made in 2019. The formula is nice. I don't think it is 110% consistently blood sugar, blue blood, jawbreaker. You know, if I were to recommend a Jeffree Star palette to someone, this would not be the one that I recommend. I would recommend Jawbreaker, Mini Breaker, Blue Blood, Black Blood, Red Blood Sugar, or even the Mini Controversy palette over this, just because I feel like it isn't as consistent as his previous formulas. And no tea, no shade, I feel like if Jeffree had released this on his own, if this were just a Jeffree Star palette, you know, on its own, his own release, no Shane Dawson, I don't think it would have flown off the well, it would have to a certain degree because there are a lot of die-hard Jeffree Star fans. But I don't feel it would have broken the internet with that amount of intensity, because I feel like kind of what made this so crazy was the fact that it was Jeffree and Shane. But if this had just been a regular Jeffree whatever, I think people would have reviewed it a bit more harshly, a bit more unbiasedly, if that makes sense. You know, it's nice. I use it. I love the Cheese Dust shade. I like the neutrals. Pigment is nice. What's the Tea is really nice. Conspiracy is a beautiful, very unique green shade. But on a whole, like I said, I feel like if this had just been a Jeffree on his own release, it would have been held to a higher standard of scrutiny, whereas with the way it was released here, it just got sold out and everyone's like, it's the most amazing thing since sliced bread. So it's not, you know, it's not bad, but it's definitely, compared to other releases and things like this, in case of formula and such, it's just kind of more middle ground for me. There are so many other palettes by him that I would recommend, that this one is just kind of okay. It was the hype. It's the fact that it's Shane Dawson that made it stand out rather than formula and color story and all of that. Then these next two are going to be middle ground for a couple different reasons. We do have two Anastasia palettes from from Anastasia. I will leave link down below reviews to these, as well as my like Anastasia oversaturating the market video, because y'all know in 2019 they released 9, count them, 9 eyeshadow palettes. But these are specifically the Carli Bybel and the Alyssa Edwards. Now the Carli Bybel is I feel, mediocre palette in the sense of color story when it was released, the fact that Anastasia has been releasing so much. I feel like it could have been so much more if the date had been pushed back and it had been released of spring of 2020. I think this would have just been received a lot better because we would have had some time to recover from that oversaturation. And this is just a much more spring and light. I do love this bare shade right here. Y'all know I hate these throwaway setting shades. This is the only one that I absolutely love. If I hit pan on that, I would buy a single of it because I pop that all over my lid and whateverness, and my eyeshadow glides on like butter. But on a whole, it's just kind of thrown away. And I feel like the fact that they had 3 collaborations in 1 year doesn't allow for each collaboration to get its own time, its own moment of use and reviews and stuff like that. So it's kind of almost cheapening it and making it not as special. Then speaking of not as special, we have the Alyssa Edwards, which I love Alyssa Edwards. Oh my stars. Her show on, I want to say Netflix. I will leave the name of it down below. But you know, this was a collaboration with a drag queen. I was all for it. But my big problem with this is this was released in the same year as all of those Norvina palettes. So here we have a colorful palette from Anastasia. Everybody lost their shiz. But when you look at these formulas of shimmers and mattes compared to the Norvina palettes, they're night and day. This formula is okay. It's pigmented, but they tend to be patchy. They're not gonna blend well. This experience with this palette just wasn't as nice as it could have been, especially when you think of the formulas they're able to create with the Norvina palettes. So personally, I think it's a little unfair to come out with this collab palette that has bright colors that are a formula that is subpar to something else you created. Like, if we know you can come out with those smooth, beautiful, blendable, creamy, pigmented brights, why couldn't you have done Alyssa right and used that formula or curated this formula better to be that amazing experience? I just thought that was a little I'm not even sure. Like, the colors are beautiful. I love the matte to shimmer ratio on this, but like I said, I'm not reaching for this because the quality and the experience isn't as good as other palettes that Anastasia released in the same year. There's just a level of redundancy, inconsistent quality, just sort of this pushing product out without any willy-nilly to how it's going to be received. And then the whole like, well, we're just, we have to release so many things because people are getting bored. And I'm like, we're bored because you keep releasing things that aren't up to the same quality of the stuff you released in the past because there was time between releases to actually make it good quality. This is something that had so much potential, but I feel like they put all of their potential into those Norvina palettes and other releases, and these were just ones that they kind of let slap a famous person's name on it and sell it. This next one is extremely subjective because if y'all hadn't guessed, typically your girl isn't running around for the browns and the bronzes and the taupes and the whatever those colors are. So when it comes to a more neutral palette, I tend to be a little bit more brutal, savagery. But the Naked Reloaded palette, this is one that I anti-hauled. And I bought it anyway because I have issues. I was in Sephora and they use some kind of hypnotic lights that make everything look absolutely amazing. And this is kind of like, I feel like this past year, end of 2018, all 2019, has kind of been an affirming year of big brands that just aren't doing it for me anymore. Kat Von D, Too Faced, Urban Decay, these big name brands that used to be it in the community and on the market. They're just kind of now just pushing stuff out that isn't very inspiring, innovative, or even on brand. This has also sort of reaffirmed that Urban Decay shadows aren't one of my end-all be-all formulas. It's okay, it's very bland, it's very safe, and I mean they are going on the naked theme, so we all know that's, you know, tends to be more neutral. But I feel like for Urban Decay, this was just kind of the start of them kind of just falling down this neutral hole of just playing it safe and sort of even, you know, their tagline is beauty with an edge. You know, they were like the bright colors, the electric palettes, the Vice palettes, and all of those things. And now they're just like, let's create safe makeup for the masses that is going to hopefully sell. So it's not a bad palette quality wise, but like I say, a lot of these compared to other things that have been released, it's just not that amazing. This next palette is something I reviewed. I gave it a very favorable review. I said, yes, this is great. Y'all go out and buy it. The Natasha Denona Sunrise palette. Now this made me so happy because y'all know Natasha Denona, she be pricey. And this is a palette she released that was $65, which is still pricey, but it's not $129, $229 pricey. And this I thought was really nice. I loved the mattes, I loved the shimmers. On a whole, it is a very nice palette. You know, it's got a really cute color story. The formulas was really nice. You know, I feel like this was a good step for her for kind of a different demographic that wanted to try her shadows, although it's still, I mean, this is still a huge purchase. But the big thing with this is I feel like this is, you know, Urban Decay and Too Faced, you know, they've got their own price point. This is a step above. We're stepping into, you know, Huda Beauty territory and kind of that leaning more towards luxury makeup. And I feel like if you're gonna go on that higher price point, there are other palettes in that kind of realm that are better than this. Y'all know I love me some Viseart. Viseart is a pricey brand. They expensive, but I feel like if you're gonna splurge on something, because this is definitely a splurge palette, splurge on something that's better. Splurge on something that's not just okay, you know, this is great to try because it's not as expensive as our other palettes, you know. Don't buy this just because it's $65 and it's Natasha Denona at a more affordable price. You know, of all the like super high-end luxury eyeshadows out there, Viseart is one of the only ones that I feel comfortable in saying, yes, invest in it, because especially the mattes, because they're such a beautiful, consistent formula. You know, like I said, you know, it's good, it's nice, I enjoy it, I use it, I absolutely adore these two shades here and this one. You know, that shimmer is gorgeous, that one, you know, but for the price point and other things that exist on the market, this is just kind of okay. You know, it's Natasha Denona's attempt to appeal to a lower demographic that don't want to pay for her $129 palettes. Then a palette that I talked about in, I believe, my December hits and misses. This is the Huda Beauty Mercury Retrograde, and this one is $67, which is, you know, skirting on that super expensive. I wouldn't recommend this palette not for $60. I mean, that is almost $70. I honestly don't get where a lot of these makeup companies come off with these prices, because that's a lot of money. And this palette, it's okay. I mean, the only really unique thing in here is gonna be this mint, this purple here. This shade is pretty unique. This one and that one. But on a whole, I just like, if this were like a $40 palette, I'd be like, yeah, sure, that's, you know, do it. But for $67, it's just not revolutionary, not groundbreaking. The formulas are okay. I would say the mattes in this aren't as good as the formulas in her mini palettes or in her Desert Dusk, Nude, Rose Gold Remastered. You know, buy one of those. This is just sort of okay. And I feel like it's also redundant in the sense of whenever I use this palette, I kind of feel like I'm creating the same look over and over again with a different shimmer. So definitely compared to the Huda Beauty palettes that I have tried in 2019, this one was the most just kind of flatline. I mean, for $67, I had better be getting a fantastic formula, a great layout. You know, I want more than just really great, funky, acrylic, 3D holographic packaging. I feel like for that price point, I would deserve that just a little bit. Next up is just this one hurts a little bit because I love this brand so much. Like, I feel like we always say this. I love this brand, please don't hate me, send me PR in the future. And these have got really great reviews on Sephora, and I don't know what I've done wrong. But these are the Melt Cosmetics Vida and Muerte palettes. Now the Vida, I feel like is a little bit less of an offender. In this one I would say is typical quality. I don't think, in my mind at least, that it's as good as 27, as Gemini, Radioactive. You know, there are a lot of crossovers from 27, from Radioactive, from Gemini. You know, it's just kind of like a mishmash best of both. So this one is pretty good. I would say that the quality is relatively consistent with this. Some of these shades can tend to muddy together a little bit. They're not quite as distinct. I do love both of those. These ones here, this is a great red. The shimmers are really nice. But then the Muerte one. And now I understand that when it comes to eyeshadows, the darker the eyeshadow, the more difficult to formulate. I absolutely love Lagrimas and Angelito. Those are just absolutely stunning. But then you get into shades like Noche Eterna, Pantheon, Velorio, Sangre. You know, basically these dark colors here, they're like pigmented, but they're the kind of pigmented that like stays there, doesn't want to blend out, doesn't play well with others. They're just not as consistent as other dark shadows from Melt Cosmetics that I've used before. And like I said, I'm wondering what I've done wrong, because I think it's Lacey from Spooky Lips and Fat Hips. She really likes these, and like I said, they've got great ratings on Sephora. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Maybe I suck at makeup. I feel like that should be a t-shirt I come out with, just maybe I suck at makeup, because it's just like, you know, you never know. I love Calaca. That's a beautiful shade there. You know, it's just compared to other things I've used by them, it was just a little bit of a letdown because the shadows just weren't as easy to manipulate and use. So this may just be a me thing, I don't know, but like I said, I would say pass on these and just go for 27 or Gemini. Then last but not least, we have got from Lunar Beauty, which I feel is a very underrated brand, but this is the Strawberry Dream palette, which is this beautiful, ethereal, kawaii gorgeousness. Like he has really stepped up his game on these past two releases with his packaging. They're very aesthetic, they're very thematic. I think he should get all kinds of props for that. And Manny MUA has a good eyeshadow formula, but I feel like this one just wasn't as good as, say, Life's a Drag, the Medusa one, definitely not the Spellbound one. You know, this was just kind of there. I do really like this Horizon shade. The Lightning shade is beautiful, but these main ones here, well, I have issues with that shimmer, and that shimmer. They're not the easiest to work with. They're kind of thick. You gotta work with them a little bit. And they just weren't as good. They just didn't blend as well. I would get really frustrated because I felt like, you know, I'd start off with one and then I'd get a deeper shade, and it would just kind of muddy out. It wouldn't blend. It wouldn't give me that nice, beautiful contrast. It just, for some reason, they weren't performing as well as ones I'd used by him in the past. The blues are okay. They're fine if you don't want to do too much blending with them. Like if you just want to do pop on the lower lash line, sure, you're fine. You're good to go. Storm Cloud is a pain to use. Blue Diamond is like all kinds of chunk, and yeah. Kind of same with Ruby Skies. So on a whole, like aesthetically, it looks very pretty, but it just wasn't up to the standard of quality that I've experienced before. And that's kind of the theme of this, is just like, you know, I've used things by these brands and I've liked things by these brands, hence repurchasing products from them. But when the standard just doesn't seem to hold true through all of the releases, it's just a little bit frustrating. It's like, how can you get something so good as Modern Renaissance, as Soft Glam, and then other palettes you release are just in the formula department? You know, color story aside, like formula comes before everything else. And so it's just let you down when you're like, you know, and I'm like, am I doing something wrong? What is it, me? So this one was just kind of sad, you know. I wanted to review it and I started using it and I just wasn't feeling it, and it was a review that never happened. I apologize for that. Just that disappointment of trying to put a palette on your eyes and just being like, this ain't it, sis. This ain't it. All right, guys, that is all I have for my disappointing palettes of 2019. I'm definitely out of time for this, so I'm going to be doing a disappointing makeup and hopefully best of makeup for 2019. Definitely stay tuned for all of that kind of amazingness. Obviously, let me know what you feel about these palettes down below. I know makeup is subjective. I keep saying it. It's all different for different people. And let me know how you use things, because, you know, we don't buy things with the intention of not liking it. You know, that's not what we're doing. And a lot of these palettes aren't bad. They're just kind of, you know, compared to other things out there that exist, they aren't that fantucking-fastic. But thank you guys so much for watching. I love you. And as always, keep it real. Mwah!